Kendrick Lamar has left the world in a state of awe this past Sunday. After delivering a riveting and culturally invigorating performance for his highly anticipated Super Bowl 59 halftime appearance, Lamar completely transformed the legendary New Orleans Superdome arena into an introspective visual representation of urban livelihood and interpretative artistic political expression, centered primarily on exploring the intricacies of African American liberalism. Kendrick has returned in true fashion for his metaphorical victory lap after dominating the hip hop genre prominently for the last year in the midst of his controversial lyrical battle between J. Cole and Canadian born rapper Drake. During his interview with Apple Music prior to the halftime spectacle, Lamar told viewers and critics alike to expect a prolific portrayal of musical storytelling focused primarily on themes of African American pride and Aborigine unity. Similar to certain profound Afrocentric implications and perspectives scattered throughout his heralded sonic legacy. Throughout the length of his career, Lamar has always taken the liberty to incorporate an assortment of underlying allusions and ethical lessons that often tend to relate to his views on the multifaceted identity and ideals of the black man who was subsequently forced into subordination whilst enduring the trials and tribulations faced in the thresholds of America. Whether he's depicting his grievances with the injustice of ethnic people in regards to the mistreatment of urban communities through the command of corrupt government institutions, or simply calling for the unity and camaraderie of all impoverished and victimized individuals who simply feel afflicted by the daunting control of systematic oppression, regardless of past affiliations to a specific gang or nationality. Lamar establishes a profound way to seamlessly balance the artistry and creativity of his inspirational and sonically liberating discography, whilst also maintaining a prominent tone of advocacy in regards to the equality and prosperity of every black and brown person around the world. So when it came time to finally embrace his historical moment and grace one of the world's biggest stages, he spared no expense in order to ensure that his grandiose depiction of freedom and extravagant call for revolution was properly broadcasted in all its unapologetic glory. By utilizing the inclusion of a multitude of significant symbolic celebrity cameos, coupled with the amazing artistry embedded in the cryptic choreography performed by an all-African American ensemble, Kendrick left the audience begging for more as he expertly infused elements and innuendos of indigenous cultural sentiments with a brazen political protest, while subsequently teleporting over 100 million viewers to a beautiful reality where the unity and acceptance of all ethnic backgrounds triumphs overall. From the numerous GNX callbacks to the star-studded visuals, it seems like Kendrick has delivered on his promise and has meticulously crafted an experience that most will remember for years to come, even going as far to further expound on the conflict with his adversary Drake by incorporating his chart-topping diss track Not Like Us into his cinematic 12-song setlist. To commemorate such an historic event, I figured I would take the opportunity of thoroughly dissecting the multi-layered implications of one of the most intriguing and thought-provoking Super Bowl halftime shows since its initial inauguration. I will go over everything you might have missed during Sunday's marvelous performance in hopes of providing a clear understanding of the abolitionist narrative Kendrick is trying his best to convey. However, since I am putting together this video with such haste, my research might be limited to a certain extent. So if I've also missed anything that you have noticed, please continue to engage with our budding community of free thinkers below in the comment section, and be sure to clue me in on anything you might have thought twice about as well. In past Super Bowl halftimes, a variety of African American artists have had the privilege of boasting the alluring mantle of headlining the championship game, such as Beyonce, Rihanna, and even Michael Jackson. However, until now, no respective hip-hop MC or rapper has headlined the occasion entirely by themselves without being a part of a larger group or collective. So Sunday night's momentous event was not just a display of musical prowess as Lamar continues to assert his dominance as a Pulitzer Prize winning lyricist, but also stood as a public representation of cultural acceptance as the highlighted art form that is often coined and labeled as belligerent and negatively influenced becomes the focal point of America's most celebrated pastime. Kendrick wholesomely embraced this opportunity in hopes of nullifying any preconceived notions or misconceptions that he might censor himself or his performance on any platform, even if it's the Super Bowl, as he took full advantage of being center stage during America's most beloved sporting event in hopes of relaying the underlying message that in order to fully appreciate American history and nationality, we first have to shed light on and acknowledge the true origins and lineage of Black or African history as it relates to the foundation and inherent sustainability of the United States. In order to help us properly digest Lamar's liberating story of the African American plight, we were subsequently introduced to the infamous Uncle Sam, ironically portrayed by none other than the renowned Oscar-winning actor Samuel L. Jackson. Amidst the War of 1812, the term Uncle Sam became a universal metaphorical personification of the United States, or specifically its appointed federal government. Uncle Sam was also often depicted as a Caucasian male who regularly donned a traditional pinstripe three-piece suit, commonly embezzled and adorned with various celebratory stripes and banners resembling the archetypes of the American institution. He was used predominantly as an ideal representation of how Americans would like to be viewed, even during times of severe segregation and crude acts of disparity. Sam began the performance by establishing his role as the narrator to Lamar's life and ultimately the overseer of racial divide and conflict in the theoretical confines of the United States. Jackson helps to establish this sentiment by welcoming Kendrick and the participating audience to the Great American Games.
Salutations! It's your Uncle Sam, and this is the Great American Game.
A proclamation shrouded in patriotic tropes and abolitionary symbolism, as Jackson infers that the deliberate deterioration and oppression of the African American community is heavily antiquated in regards to its genocidal and systematic approach, so much so that one could refer to it as a game of sorts. It is often looked at as a game played by the elites that have instilled and permeated a racial caste system throughout America, in hopes of reaping the rewards of a divided constitutional foundation, purposely inciting unnecessary competition amongst underprivileged individuals of ethnic descent in hopes of deterring the unison of all people of color or African heritage. The phrase can also be interpreted as a double entendre, as the Great American Game can be seen as a nod to the Super Bowl, which has remained a concurrent tradition since its inception in 1967. It is also important to reference that one of Samuel L. Jackson's most notable acting roles in his recent history was an Uncle Tom-like figure in the 2012 Western epic Django Unchained, which depicted Jackson as a satirical concubine who controversially showed immense favor and admiration for his kidnapper in the midst of the disturbing 400-year reign of the notorious transatlantic slave trade. And Uncle Tom is essentially the subservient African-American version of Uncle Sam, which normally resembles a more sullen message highlighting aspects of moralistic implications, which often revolves around reflective themes of self-hatred and deprivation. In most cases, the African captive or Uncle Tom is normally forced to abide by standards and restrictions that are placed upon his race, even though he realizes that this forced ideal of assimilation in turn ultimately aids to the meticulous impairment of the African race and the thresholds of America or any white governed institution. The genius in this approach is quite evident, especially since Jackson's character also stands as a homage to a role Kendrick has played previously for his critically acclaimed Grammy-winning album To Pimp a Butterfly. He can be seen draped in a similar garment in the music video For Free, as he raps on his self-reflective track for his third studio album. This symbolic comparison could be seen as a literal metaphor for his stance and views on the unfortunately jaded relationship between African descended people and the American infrastructure. Lamar reminds us with this opening statement that the hideous aforementioned slave labor camps of the so-called New Empire of Liberty were a primary source for the wealth and privilege of most, if not all, of American society to this day, especially since the Industrial Revolution relies so heavily upon the distribution of cotton and other natural resources through means of manipulative, aggravated physical labor and systemic franchise torture. Lamar's simplistic approach to his artistic direction beautifully parallels the complexities of the message he's aiming to deliver. As he continues to unfold his theoretical disposition, the camera begins to pan above the dimly lit amphitheater to help the viewers understand the concept of the great game that Jackson speaks of. Lamar displays an arrangement of four shapes similar to the iconic controls found whilst using a PlayStation controller. The flashing symbols are placed upon a neon grid that also draws similarities to the stagnant layout of a tic-tac-toe game. The cryptic iconography bears an eerie resemblance to the shapes and themes found in the Netflix original Squid Games, which shares the dystopian story of how the rich enjoy watching the poor suffer for their entertainment, alluding once again that the game that most African Americans and people of color are inherently taught to play and hopefully finesse is still extremely prevalent in today's racially motivated society. The grid also serves as a constant reminder that no matter which option or button you choose to press, the disadvantages and traumatic legacy of institutionalized racism remains present in the lives of many despite background, circumstance, or your hierarchical position in life. After flashing in a monochromatic sequence, the square icon is selected, and in turn, we are transported to an entirely new setting, where Lamar is seen kneeling ominously on top of the very same car his most recent album was named after, a GNX, or the 1987 Grand National Experimental to be exact, which is another subtle callback to Kendrick's birth year, 1987, and the social and political climate that stemmed from the peerless Ronald Reagan administration. On his sixth studio album, he states on the electrifying anthem, TV Off, that all he ever wanted was a black Grand National. And now, after finally achieving the success he's always dreamt of, he's able to enjoy the fruits of his labor, which seems simple in nature, but in actuality, this sentiment stems from a deeper abolitionist mindset, where he acknowledges that we as African descendants have never been respectfully rewarded for the strenuous efforts that helped build the independent country of the United States of America. This also served as another great nod to Pimp a Butterfly, since in Wesley's theory, Kendrick leaves the listener with a rhetorical question as he raps, "What you want? A house or a car? 40 acres and a mule, a piano or guitar? Anything, see my name is Uncle Sam, I'm your dog." So now in present day, he quite literally has the car that Uncle Sam has promised him through generations of manipulation and coerced slavery. But as a result, he realizes material possessions are not enough to mask and erase the centuries of abuse that people of color have been forced to detrimentally internalize. The car also stands as a reference to him bringing the culture of California, specifically Compton, to the main stage of one of the world's most talked about events, showing how he's willing to continue to represent the impoverished community and individuals that face the same crude mistreatment he was forced to succumb to in his adolescence, largely due to his environment and the prejudiced control of its inhabitants. Without further hesitation, he commences his long-awaited performance with a rendition of the self-titled GNX teaser trailer song that was unexpectedly published hours before the official release of his latest musical endeavor. I've recently taken the liberty of dissecting the convoluted lyricism and vindictive verses that envelop the essential premise of this track in my previous breakdown video. So in this specific instance, I will not be taking the time to deliberately explain every single bar as I've done in the past. Whilst performing, the crowd is treated to a surprising reveal as the door and trunk of the coupe open to the glorified emergence of a multitude of dancers dressed in select colored garments from head to toe, each outfit designed to convey a specific enamored gradient, red, blue, and white. These colors can also be looked at as a double entendre of sorts, as they bear a striking resemblance to the patriotic shades of red, white, and blue that are often used to express liberty and American nationalism, whilst also standing as a reference to the gang culture that has impacted the Californian lifestyle and the livelihood of the surrounding states. In his past projects, Kendrick has mentioned his alleged affiliations to the Piru and Blood Collective in Compton, California. However, just like his beautifully executed attempts in Squabble Love to create unity amongst the warring factions of California, Lamar can be seen wearing a blue jacket showing his support for the Crips, as well as displaying his admiration and camaraderie for people who aren't gang members by having some performers don a white outfit to symbolically relay the fact that they're essentially brandishing a white flag of neutrality. It is also important to highlight the extra verse that is stitched to the end of his live rendition, which promptly expounds on his triumphant victory over his musical opposition, specifically the Canadian recording artist Drake. Lamar has recently denounced his relationships with the remaining members of the so-called Big Three last year. This sudden uproar of competition created a lyrical debacle that spanned the course of a year or so between the two most prominent aforementioned parties and culminated in Lamar receiving 5 Grammys in a single night for a chart-topping diss track aimed directly at Drake, titled Not Like Us. In this extended cut of the teaser track, Lamar relays to the audience that you would not get the picture if I had to sit you for hours in front of the Louvre. You would not have a soul, even if I had told you to stand next to Johnny and Q. In the beginning statements for this additional verse, Kendrick takes more shots at Drake's character as he suggests that even if Drake were to have the culture handed to him, he still wouldn't understand the sense of responsibility an African American individual should embrace in order to efficiently and positively retain the mantle of being regarded as one, if not the most commercially successful artist of our given lifetime. He exemplifies this testament by also stating that even if Drake were to have joined the cult classic hip-hop collective Black Hippie, which was formed in early 2009 under the TDE umbrella by Kendrick, Schoolboy Q, J-Rock, and Ab-Soul, and often praised for their ethical presentation of conscious rap in relation to Afrocentric principles, he would still not be considered as one of them, or essentially he would not be like us. He conceptualizes his definition of us in order to help encompass and establish not just Drake's exclusion from our unfortunately subjugated culture, but also the exclusion of white America and their role as the controversially innocent bystander. As both Drake and the Caucasian population of America have struggled to fully understand and appreciate the impact that the African descendant population has provided to the United States, and even if they were to stand with us in times of adversity or protest, they would never fully grasp that the constraints that have plagued our people for centuries have only become more cumbersome and morally depressive as the US government and its Caucasian representatives prevail. He elaborates his idealistic testament by continuing to state that he started with nothing but government cheese, and now he can seize the government too. Remember, the food stamp color was tan and brown, but now the hundreds is blue. Lamar refers to the common downtrodden upbringing that most people of color are forced to endure in areas afflicted by impoverishment, and shares an example of his own success in hopes that his testimony can be seen or used as a vessel of hope and encouragement, as he has personally overcame the inherent financial struggle that is often looked at as a detrimental burden in most, if not all, ethnic communities. In his last bar to his opening performance, Lamar continues to rub salt in the wounds of not just Drake, but anyone who dares to challenge him and his self-proclaimed accolade as the best rapper alive, by ending the song with a brazen statement exclaiming the following: "Remember I said I was the greatest when y'all debated the number 1 and the 2? Topic was always hilarious to me. You carried them to me, I bring out the..." In similar fashion to the conclusion of his teaser trailer, the track ends abruptly as Lamar yells the word Christ. He essentially chooses to satirically end the song before he is forced to say something that would obstruct his normally peaceful and controlled demeanor. In layman's terms, he had to stop himself before he presumably crashed out and said something he would regret, such as threatening Drake in a violent nature during one of the biggest performances of his career. One of the most exhilarating moments of the night follows the succession of the aforementioned introductory song. Preceding the climax of the GNX teaser, Lamar can be seen standing on top of the Grand National variant as he proclaims that the revolution is about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy.
The revolution about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy. Someone better squabble up.
This phrase is a modern interpolation of the famed Gil Scott-Heron song, titled "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," which was published in the 1970s as a satirical poem and song based on the ideals of the Black liberation movement and pro-abolitionist mindset that played a vital role in the fight for civil rights. At the time, Scott was hoping to incite a call for action in hopes of prompting a revolt or protest against the federal government and its elected officials, as he personally believed that in order to permanently assert a sense of change in our Western society, we need to personally take the opportunity to contest the injustice of our people instead of waiting around for assistance from larger, more established organizations who in turn might not have our best interests in heart. Lamar's statement mirrors these principles as well, as he urges his people to find encouragement through his alluring declaration for freedom. He figuratively contradicts Gil Scott's untelevised revolution by suggesting that this time around we take advantage of the exposure and spotlight that our struggle has garnered due to the technological dependence of the modern world, ultimately advising us to use the advancements we've had as a human race to help propel the message of peace and racial equality. Kendrick provides a literal interpretation of this televised revolution as he foreshadows the politically charged performance that is about to ensue on our main stage of America in front of none other than the recently elected president, Donald Trump. who has been in the midst of controversy after his inauguration for his evil and inhumane treatment of ethnic people and his bigoted stance on immigration. Lamar's Sunday night extravaganza amassed over 133 million concurrent live viewers. So to say that this was the most opportune occasion for such a revolutionary display of cultural pride is an understatement. Kendrick made sure that the outcry of all who feel the pain and grief of being oppressed was heard on a grand scale, reaffirming his political positions and grievances in front of not just the US, but the world. This phrase can also be seen as a double entendre, alluding to his overly publicized beef with Drake, as he mocks the recording artist and subsequently Uncle Sam by stating, "the right time, but the wrong guy," assuring the audience that even though he's about to effectively end Drake's career once and for all, he also has the moral inclination to use this opportunity to help push the culture forward and promote a positive resolution to the racial anarchy that has been trickled down from the executive and economic institutions of every country that has been influenced and controlled by the imperialistic guise of the Western civilization. As the performance continues and the narrative begins to unfold, a group of female dancers, clothed completely in red, suddenly swarm the stage as they harmoniously pronounce to the audience that someone better squabble up. One can infer that this is another call for action, as Lamar asks the governing parties and clandestine establishments that aim to victimize and deter the progression of all people of color to essentially get ready for a fight, since he's not willing to jeopardize his liberty and freedoms any longer. The red garments can also be a referral to Kendrick's self-professed family ties to the Piru and Blood gang, showing how in times of conflict he always has a support system behind him, ready to go to war for his beliefs and subsequently protect him from harm. The second song of his Marwood setlist begins to play as he is surrounded by another adjacent group of performers dressed in white outfits. They immediately surround Lamar, encircling the rapper as he dances to it, the introductory build-up to his hit song, Squabble Up. This specific group of gentlemen hail from the Oakland dance collective, Turf Fiends, and stand as a physical personification of Kendrick's aspirations of bringing together people from every walk of life despite location or affiliation, specifically in relation to the Californian diaspora of culture that stems from the infamous SoCal region all the way to the notorious Bay Area located in Northern California. Lamar's attire can also be analyzed as a conceptual part of his message, as he brandishes a Dodger blue jacket similar to his blue getup in the song's self-titled music video. Brandished in front of the intricately decaled letterman is the word Gloria, written in fruition across both sides of the varsity, designed by his friend and frequent collaborator Martine Rose. Gloria is an allusion to the closing track featuring SZA on his most recent studio album GNX. Since it also is the Spanish word for glory, Kendrick utilizes this chance to purposely display his reverence for the large Latino and Hispanic community that make up a large percentage of the Californian demographic, as well as showing his allegiance to all people of color and African descent. On the back of the letter-cladded jacket reads the words PG Lang, which is a nod to the production company that he founded with Dave Free in March of 2020. On the sleeves are patches symbolizing his upcoming world tour headlined by him and SZA. And lastly, the diamond encrusted lowercase a that is dangling from his neck is also a brilliant conceptualization of PG Lang's insignia, which is a crooked letter A, representing the primitive and artistically simplistic nature of the company. However, that hasn't stopped fans around the world from assuming that the pendant garnished in precious stones was more than just fashionable iconography, and instead stood for more sinister and vindictive implications, since the letter could also be referred to as the visual interpretation of an A minor note, which would be a more than subtle jab at Drake in regards to his blatant diss on Lamar's Grammy-winning track, Not Like Us. The second song ends as Uncle Sam returns to narrate in a sullen state of shock, interrupting Lamar's energetic performance to tell him and the presumably concerned audience that this Super Bowl headlining debut is advantageously too loud, too reckless, and too ghetto.
Oh, too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up!
This jarring remark is used as a literal comparison to the way that white America potentially views the African descendant population or people of color in times of celebration and cultural expression. Even when we choose to protest for our rights to civil union and equality, we are often stereotyped as belligerent and savage individuals. This is a common form of systematic mental institutionalization administered by the United States government in hopes of brainwashing the African American citizen into believing that they aren't as dignified or intelligent as a Caucasian American is in regards to our extravagant and enthralling traditional practices or sometimes boisterous tribalistic demeanors. This also reflects aspects of Black culture and its unfortunate subordination in America by showing how alarmed the U.S. becomes whenever an ethnic citizen does not conform to the societal standards that are enforced upon them. Lamar utilizes Uncle Sam's commentary in order to expound on the presented political narrative he is depicting. Kendrick shows how many African American artists find it hard to traverse through the racial prerequisites of Western civilization, as many who find themselves in reach of fame or success in general often have to sugarcoat their appeal in hopes of abiding to the prejudiced expectations of the capitalistic white America. Lamar understands that most Caucasian American citizens would rather have a more tame and culturally reclusive halftime instead of a politically motivated rap segment, since it could be identified by them as too urban and radical in relation to their common practices. His prediction was conclusively correct, as he received a tremendous amount of backlash for his revolutionary presentation, even though this was the most watched Super Bowl of all time. The camera then abruptly cuts to Kendrick and a vast assortment of African American male dancers, all dressed in symbolic patriotic colors and imagery. His chart-topping single, Bird to Pimp a Butterfly, titled Humble, begins to play as the surrounding performers nod their heads vigorously in response to Uncle Sam's demand for censorship. However, as the frame pans out, the audience is left with a stunning visual as the encompassing dancers deliberately form an American flag around Kendrick, allowing his given profile to subsequently divide the flag into two halves to help further promote the implications of Lamar's political and social commentary on the state of America. He uses the song Humble in the metaphorical sense as he tells America to essentially humble itself, since the very things they might label as ghetto or loud ultimately becomes the most sought after and lucrative forms of entertainment, especially when you take into consideration the extreme levels of systemic cultural appropriation that plagues the United States and the world as a whole. He is also trying to relay the sentiment that America was built on the backs and shoulders of African men by assembling an all-Black collective of dancers in order to form the patriotic symbol at hand. His willingness to continue his vibrant display of African American pride provides more insight into the story he's aiming to tell, as we realize that he's not easily coerced into conforming to the wants and needs of the white man. Instead, he will find a way, no matter how tedious the process is, to deliver a message of hope and emancipation to his people. Wallace transitioning into his fourth song of the night, Euphoria, which is often referred to as an energetic yet scornful diss track against his arch nemesis Drake. A giant sign displaying the words "Warning, Wrong Way" can be seen brilliantly lit in the midst of the crowd and their bleachers. This allusion to the alarming instructions often found while playing a video game serves as a genius homage to the criticism that Kendrick will receive from the US government as he ignores their constant disapproval of his performance. He deliberately continues to take advantage of such a grandiose event by choosing to play songs that are referred to as controversial, especially in the whitewashed setting of the Super Bowl. The sign can also be seen as a double entendre, as the audience can interpret the alarming message in a literal sense. Since during this esteemed rendition of Euphoria, Kendrick can be seen rapping in an entirely new environment. As the field opens up and becomes more visible, we are finally allowed to see an array of streetlights planted throughout the football arena. This is done purposely to help simulate the notoriously decrepit streets and neighborhoods that are riddled throughout the quote-unquote gentrified ghettos of California. The use of the dimly lit street lamps is a notable metaphor for danger, since most impoverished individuals were taught as a child to come home before the streetlights turn on. This suggestive tradition is normally set in place to help the youth that are embedded in the projects and sections of the U.S. remain safe from the perils of the hood. As he begins to perform his next song, Man at the Garden, we can see an individual laying on top of the aforementioned street lamp, symbolizing that in times of danger, instead of heeding the warning from the crowd that he is inherently going the wrong way, the African American male chooses to rather remain calm and poignant, since the violent nature of his environment is something that he has presumably grown accustomed to. Lamar also chooses to expound on the message of unity and togetherness, especially in the thresholds of California, as he can be seen rapping in front of the same Bay Area dance collective that surrounded him during the introduction to his spectacular performance. The background dancers begin to harmonize as Lamar continues to declare that he and his people deserve it all, which in turn stands as another beautifully executed analogy in relation to the falsifiable sense of accreditation that is often appointed to most ethnic individuals even after achieving extreme levels of success. Notably, one of the encompassing Oakland natives is also donning a hat with the word peekaboo graffitied on its pronounced lid, serving as an allusion to the following song in this set list, which is also named Peekaboo. After Man at the Garden concludes, Uncle Sam returns to deliver another racially motivated statement in hopes of deterring Lamar's political intentions by censoring the impact that his performance might have on the ethnic community. He states that Lamar is using a culture cheat code in regards to his inclusion of African American dancers and actors throughout his highly anticipated set. Essentially relaying the fact that Kendrick is trying to win over the hearts of the black and brown community through an intricate and public display of cultural allegiance. So in turn, Uncle Sam or the US government will deduct one life from Lamar and his community. This can be interpreted as a literal sacrifice, referring to the death of innocent ethnic people, or as a metaphorical remark aimed at depicting the government's frustrations with Lamar and his revolutionary efforts. Peekaboo begins to abruptly play following Uncle Sam's sudden interruption and crude narration. Similar to the video game-esque symbology that has been riddled amongst this incredible halftime show, Lamar exemplifies the phrase cheat code by appearing inside a gigantic X, which shares a striking resemblance to the X button you would find on a console's controller. This X is also an allusion to the famed political rights activist Malcolm X, who changed his last name from Little to X after joining the Nation of Islam due to his prominent belief that most, if not all, African American surnames have been derived from the pre-existing slave owners who aimed to systematically strip the identity of all African individuals by having them forget where they initially came from, which ultimately promotes the division of all people of color, since we are led to believe that we are all stem from different cultural backgrounds instead of understanding that all ethnic people came from the same ancestral origins. In the past, Lamar has shown his belief in the Nation of Islam by stating previously on his Pulitzer Prize winning album Damn, "I'm an Israelite. Don't call me black no more. That word is only a color. It ain't facts no more." During the culmination of the upbeat anthem Peekaboo, Kendrick approaches a group of female dancers dressed entirely in white and proceeds to tell them sarcastically that he would love to play their favorite song, referring to his chart-topping diss track Not Like Us, but they love to sue. This time around, Kendrick didn't leave much to interpretation when he said, "You know they love to sue." He was taking a direct and personal shot at Drake and his character, since he's previously gone as far as to file a defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group over the release of Not Like Us. Lamar teases the introduction to the song by playing a couple seconds of the beat before telling the audience that maybe he'll think about playing the track. But for now, let's slow it down. This is a brilliant way to incorporate his most famous and controversial song, since many critics and fans alike were under the impression that Drake's prior threats would deter the Compton rapper's motivations to continue his public ridicule. It also serves as a double entendre, alluding to the fact that Uncle Sam and the rest of America want him to stay within the margins of their approval. This is quite evident after Uncle Sam tells Kendrick that he's lost his damn mind for attempting to go against his instructions by choosing to perform the song instead of conforming to the government's attempts to control him and his people. Adhering to Uncle Sam's warning, Lamar chooses to play a string of calm and cerebral tracks from his legendary catalog of music, starting with Luther, then slowly transitioning to Gloria featuring SZA, and ending with All the Stars from the historic soundtrack for the revolutionary 2018 movie Black Panther. Kendrick is essentially trying his best to give the US what they want by finally choosing to attach himself to the whitewashed archetypes America loves to impose on its African descendant citizens. However, in true Kendrick fashion, he continues to subliminally rub salt in the wounds of Drake and his supporters by specifically sharing the stage with SZA, who was rumored to have had romantic engagements with the Canadian-born rapper prior to the lyrical beef between him and Lamar, showing America that they will have to try harder to reform his approach and censor him, because even when he is willing to follow along and act accordingly, he will still choose to stick up for what he knows is right in regards to Drake's pedophilic allegations. Pleased by his efforts to remain cordial and subservient, Uncle Sam returns for his final appearance after Lamar's showcase for All the Stars. Brandishing a smile from ear to ear, Sam tells Lamar that that's what America wants, nice and calm.
That's what America wants, nice and calm. You're almost there. Don't mess this.
Oh no.
referring to Lamar's abrupt transition from performing politically charged upbeat music that aims to depict the hardships and cultural division often placed on people of color. Uncle Sam, or in this case white America as a whole, persists on telling Kendrick that he's almost there and to not mess this up, alluding to the fact that Kendrick's halftime spectacle is about to come to an end, and instead of doing something that would be deemed irrational by the US government, he should remain subjugated to the derogatory proposals of America. However, before Uncle Sam is able to finish his sentence, he is cut short by none other than Kendrick himself, as he blatantly ignores America's advice and proceeds to give his African descendant people what they truly came here for. Before officially performing Not Like Us, Lamar tells the crowd, 40 acres and a mule? This is bigger than the music. This can be seen as a genius callback to his introductory statements where he remarks, "You picked the right time, but the wrong guy," deliberately choosing to take advantage of the hype for his beloved diss track by proceeding to provide another public call for revolution. The phrase 40 acres and a mule derives from the aftermath of the transatlantic slave trade and refers to the promise made to formerly enslaved African Americans after the Civil War. This federal agreement was set in stone by Abraham Lincoln and Union General William Sherman, who issued this official order in 1865. This goal was to provide land and resources to ultimately help the remaining African captives that were subsequently freed, allowing them to become economically self-sufficient. After designating over 400,000 acres of property to this initiative, which would then be split in even 40-acre portions amongst the African families afflicted by such hardship and cruel mistreatment. The order was revoked promptly through the administration of the preceding president, Andrew Johnson, after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Since this promise has been broken, African Americans have been vigorously fighting for the justice of our people, specifically because we have realized that the reparations that have been owed to us as citizens of America is essentially the bare minimum in terms of the actual restitution that is needed to properly instill a positive and self-sustained livelihood apart from the white man's institution. He's rapped about this in several thought-provoking projects in the past, most notably from his 2015 album To Pimp a Butterfly. Lamar is conclusively relaying the fact that this performance is bigger than him, since America wants the black and brown community of the US to be happy with their unfortunate circumstance, even though Lamar is telling us not to be satisfied, and to keep on pushing towards actual freedom, not just financial advancements. And during his highly anticipated rendition of Not Like Us, Lamar takes the opportunity to mention Drake by name while smiling in a vindictive manner to the camera. This moment was a brilliant and beautiful testament to Lamar's ability to always stick up for the rights and morals he strongly believes in, especially since most critics were convinced that he would not add fuel to the fire after Drake's sudden legal disputes, by voicing his opinions on the pedophilic behavior the Canadian rapper is now known for. To further expound on this victory lap of sorts, the camera pans out to our surprise as we see the Compton native Serena Williams crip walking to the notorious diss track. Williams dancing on stage in a similar fashion to our iconic celebration at the 2012 London Olympics is significant for several reasons. Since she's a Compton-born celebrity, just like Lamar, she understands the implications of crip walking in times of festivity. The renowned dance has been attached to the Crip gang and their affiliates since the induction of their organization. So for her to demonstrate her appreciation for the legacy and heritage for her community on one of the largest stages in the world only helps her pay additional homage to her hometown, as well as displaying her immense sense of cultural reverence in relation to the traditions and practices of her people. However, she's also rumored to have had a romantic entanglement of sorts with the aforementioned rapper Drake, so Kendrick in turn utilized her appearance as another chance to take an even more personal shot at his known rival. Not Like Us then promptly leads into the Mustard-produced stadium anthem, TV Off. Lamar made sure to keep his concurrent altercation with Drake the topic of conversation as he delivers an aggressive yet artistically pronounced performance of yet another diss track aimed at destroying the credibility and character of the Canadian rapper. To help signify the culmination of his historic halftime show, Lamar raps the words, "Turn his TV off," as he emotes to the camera in a suggestive manner, as if he were essentially turning off the broadcast or television of every citizen who finds themselves enthralled by his performance. TV Off is a brilliant metaphor that is purposely used to relay how Kendrick honestly feels about the situation at hand, since he personally believes that it's time to stop giving attention to his adversaries and focus on more important issues like the political and economic climate of the world. In relation to the year-long beef between him and Drake, the phrase also has a more vulgar pretense, since it could also be referring to homicidal notions or implications towards a fellow rapper. However, a more literal interpretation would be that the proposed televised revolution that he mentioned during the start of his set has come to an end in this instance, as his call for cultural unity has been broadcasted universally, even at the expense of crippling his relationship with Uncle Sam and the United States government. Subsequently, we can see a large neon sign protrude from the center of the field, spelling in bold letters the phrase, "Game Over," as if Kendrick has failed at completing the great American game due to his reluctant attitude and his resilient efforts to display his inherent African American pride. This can also be seen as Kendrick's final double entendre for the night, as he alludes to him defeating Drake once and for all by mocking and teasing him in the midst of the most watched event in American history, next to the Apollo 11 moon landing, while simultaneously telling the Canadian rapper that the game is essentially over and he has won and remained the victor. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of the College of Free Thought. If you guys really enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and show your support in the comment section by leaving a remark or two, or essentially clicking the like button because it's free, or the subscribe button if you'd like to as well. Obviously, I definitely appreciate every single bit of support that I get from you guys. It is immense and it means the world to me. I never thought I would ever see this sort of progression in this time frame, and I'm very blessed to have had the opportunity to make the content that I actually truly love. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. I promise it won't take as long as it did for this one. I was just battling sickness, and on top of that, I've been going through things at work because, you know, as an African American, we gotta keep hustling, man. But I thank you guys so much, like I said, for joining me. You have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you.